In honor of Black History Moment, I decided to share a little information from our ancestors. The institution of slavery was introduced in Rome when Romulus gave Roman fathers permission to sell their own children into slavery around the 2nd century BC. The practice grew as Rome expanded, with many slaves being acquired through warfare. Slaves were considered property under Roman law and had no legal rights. They could be subjected to corporal punishment, sexual exploitation, torture, and execution. There were legal restrictions on freeing slaves, and escaped slaves could be hunted down and returned, often for a reward. Sound familiar? Wait, there's more. During the 1st century, Rome invaded and conquered Jerusalem, installing Herod as king. Over the span of approximately 150 years, the Romans would rise as an empire, conquering Greece, Spain, Portugal, France, and eventually Britain. As subjects of the Roman Empire, they were introduced to Roman culture, which included slavery. When the Europeans came to North America, they brought slavery with them. The slave traders tried to justify their wrongdoing by claiming they were saving the lives of the uncivilized Africans. Defenders of slavery argued that slavery had existed throughout history and was the natural state of mankind. They pointed to the 10th commandment, which says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant." Then there's the curse Noah put on the descendants of Ham. After falling asleep, drunk and naked, and being disrespected by his son Ham, Noah cursed his grandson, saying that his offspring will be servants to the offspring of Shem and Japheth. You can read about the curse in Genesis 9:20 through 27. Abraham was a descendant of Shem and was the father of two great nations, the Israelites and the Ishmaelites. Abraham had two slaves. He had several slaves. The descendants of Japheth were believed to be fair in complexion and settled in Europe. Romans are descendants of this tribe. The descendants of Cush, on the other hand, are known to be of a darker complexion and are indigenous to Northeast Africa. Based on that, one might be inclined to believe that slave traders were right. I'm here to assure you they were not. First of all, Noah cursed Canaan, not Cush. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter for the Lord. From the Cushites came great kings and queens, most notably the Queen of Sheba, who was mentioned in the Book of Solomon. Slavery, as described in the Bible, does not look anything like what went on in America. From its establishment in 1766 through its abolishment in 1865, servants or slaves in the Old Testament had legal rights. Masters were required to provide them with adequate food, shelter, and protection. Slaves were treated as part of the family. You can find some information about that in Deuteronomy 16:14. They could not be physically abused or tortured. Exodus 21:20 through 27 contains laws on how to treat servants. Servants were not bound in chains, but were free to move around with or without their masters. Servants were also allowed to carry weapons and fought alongside their masters in war. Genesis 14:4 and Nehemiah 4:16. Servants often served as trusted advisors and companions. 2 Kings 6 gives us two great examples of this kind of relationship. In the New Testament, you see servants who are highly regarded, as was the case of the centurion and his slave, Matthew 8:5 through 13, and Luke 7:2 through 9. Furthermore, servants held positions of authority and managed their master's finances. Jesus provided an example of this in the parable of the talents, Matthew 25, 14 through 30. So how did we get all of this wrong? Well, it all stems from the translation of a four-letter word, E-B-E-D, or ebed. Some Bible scholars use the word ebed or evid to refer to slaves. Ebed has a much wider meaning than the English term, and in many cases is more accurately translated into English as servant or hired worker. Ebed is not inherently negative, but relates to work. The word ebed identifies someone as dependent on someone else with whom they stand in some sort of relation. The King James Version of the Bible translates ebed as servant 491 times and slave only twice, once in each testament, Jeremiah 2:14, which is the Old Testament, and Revelations 18:13, which is the New Testament. In the Old Testament, Jeremiah mourns the captivity of Israel. In the New Testament, John is mourning the fall of Babylon. What this teaches us is that slavery is not something to be celebrated or accepted as a way of life. If we were meant to be slaves, God would not have commissioned Moses to free the Israelites from their oppressors in Egypt. He wouldn't have sent judges to rescue these same people from their captors, even though they had forgotten about him and did evil in his sight. Not once, not twice, but 12 times. And he would not have sent Isaiah to prophesy of a Messiah who would come to set the captives free. God doesn't want us to be slaves, but he knew we would become ensnared by our own desires, our doubts, and plain old disobedience. He knew we would need a Savior, so he sent his only begotten Son to save us from the bondage of sin. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. John 3:16 and 17. Knowing this, that our old man was crucified with Christ, that the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves of sin. Romans 6 and 6. Jesus said, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits a sin is a slave of sin, and a slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. John 8:34 through 36. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not be encumbered once more by a yoke of slavery. Galatians 5 and 1. Christ has set us free from everything from A to Z. He has set us free from anger, bitterness, calamities such as cancer and COVID, diseases such as diabetes, envy, fear, guilt, health issues such as hypertension, indecisiveness, jealousy, killing, lying, malice, negativity, obesity, prejudice, quarrelsomeness, rage, selfishness, thoughtlessness, unforgiveness, vanity, worry, xenophobia, yokes of any kind, and zaniness. Thank God that he has set us free indeed.